something that's really helpful is to just first lean in on your personal connections, right? And so, everyone knows people. Even if the people that you're leaning on aren't your customer audience, right? They're not your intended audience. Many times they know people who might be, right? So kind of lean in on your family, your friends, other alumni from your school, previous professors. So that's one way that you can kind of jumpstart the process. It's not necessarily going to interview, your mom and dad if they're not your target audience, but sometimes it's helpful to say, hey, who do you know? Can you introduce me to them, right? So that's one way they can do that. Another way they can do that is, there are all of these different kind of sourcing services out there. Not affiliated with any of them, like not like a recommendation, but there's Respondent, there's userinterviews.com, where basically you can say, hey, here's the kind of people that I want to be able to contact. Here are the questions I want to ask, and then kind of they can reach out to those people for you in a way that you might not be able to do yourself. I do think that one of the things that you want to keep in mind, though, is many times people aren't really eager to be chatting with you because they've got their own stuff, right? Like they've got their own jobs, they've got their own concerns, etc. And so something that can be quite helpful, right, is to make sure that we're compensating interviewees for their time. It doesn't need to be anything massive, but it should be something that helps encourage them to actually sit down and take it seriously in terms of, okay, well, let me actually talk through what are my pain points. Let me actually talk through here are the different solutions that I'm using. Here are the things where I see our gaps, etc. Right? So really kind of those are the three core parts in terms of how I think about sourcing people to interview is like first lean on your own network in terms of people that already know. Some of them might be your customers, some of them might not be, but they'll always know someone who is. And then kind of if that has run dry and you can't get enough people to chat with, you can always use external services. And then just, make sure that you are encouraging people to do so by providing a little bit of incentive. So so one of the things that we actually want to not do, and this is going to sound a little bit crazy, we actually don't want to necessarily hit like statistical significance, right? Like we just want to be able to have like directionally a good sense of, hey, I kind of understand these are the kinds of people that we want to go after. And like, these are the problems that people actually have. And so generally speaking, you want to talk to at least 5 people because that way kind of you get a broad range of views, right? Kind of if you only talk to 1 or 2 people, you're probably going to wind up with some set of bias. On the flip side, you don't want to talk with more than 30 people, right? Because if you're trying to chat with 100 people, that is boiling the ocean. That's way too many conversations and kind of you're getting diminishing marginal returns. At that point, it might make a lot more sense to send out surveys instead if you're trying to be able to get some sort of quantifiable thing, right? So if you're trying to figure out, hey, what percentage of people are XYZ, that should be a survey, not like a user interview. Generally speaking, something that is super helpful is actually my general rule of thumb is to interview folks up until you start to hear people repeat, right? So kind of like, oh, person number 17, the entire interview sounds awfully similar to interview number 3, let's say. That's when you know that you've generally kind of hit kind of the cap within that population. So once you hear like 1 or 2 repeats from new interviews on old interviews, that's generally when it's okay to say, okay, we're mostly done, right? So something that can be helpful is to say, hey, I'm actually going to go ahead and overbook, right? So like, hey, I'm going to schedule all these interviews. And then, just keep running them up until you start to hear repeats. And then once you have kind of that confidence of, okay, I know what it is I'm trying to tackle, then don't hesitate to say, hey, we've gotten all what we need. Unfortunately, we do need to cancel. And, we want to give you back that time, right? For all the people that you haven't interviewed yet. So that's how I generally think about, how many people you need to chat with before you start to be able to address that problem that you're trying to solve through user interviews, whether that is validating the problem, right? So customer segment, customer pain, or whether that's validating the solution in terms of whether they're willing to pay for it, what challenges they have, what alternatives they have, etc. So, yeah.